Excuse me a moment. So what if this is you? This will represent you, this cup. Of course, you know I have the appropriate logo on the front. Go Colts. And this is just a cup. A cup is what? It's a container. And what does a container do? Contains, right? So this morning, this is you. Now, for different ones of us, our containers may be different shapes, different sizes, different, things. But in general, we're going to say we're all a vessel. And what if this is your world? This represents kind of your orbit, the area in which you have, some would call maybe a sphere of influence. This could include the area of, your work, your family, your neighborhood, your coworkers, friends, all of the people maybe you come across in your typical day of life. And so you are in your world, and it surrounds you with all the people and places and things you come in contact. And what if this is God? God is a God of blessings, God of hope, a God of power, God of healing, a God of strength, a God of forgiveness and grace and so much other things. And what if God is a God who fills, and he wants to fill you with the things that he fills his people with? And so how much would he put inside of you? That much? Would that be as much as you deserve? Not really, because for all of us, none of this is what we deserve. I don't know. I don't deserve any. And yet God fills. But what if he fills you to here, and God in his generosity is willing to fill clear to there? What would be, how awesome would that be? You're totally full, right? But is that where God stops? Because God is an inexhaustible well of blessing and grace and forgiveness, and the long list of things that God supplies and you can only get from God. And so if this keeps pouring into this, what's going to happen? It's going to what? What was the word? Oh, good word. That's what I want to talk about. God of the overflow, because that's exactly what God does. And if it overflows, where's it going to go? Yeah. Well, where's it going to go? If he keeps pouring into you, it's going to go everywhere in that sphere of influence. It's going to go, you notice it goes in every direction. This way, that way. It doesn't just stay on one side or the other. It keeps going. And it affects the world around it. God's blessings. Because God's overflows because of what God gives you is not intended to stay just with and within you. It is to overflow through you to family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, so they too can be blessed or influenced by you. And I'll talk about that for a couple minutes today and next week. See, it says in 2 Timothy 2 verse 1, look at what Paul says. If anyone cleanses himself from what is dishonorable, he will be look at the word, vessel. It's a container. What's a vessel? For honorable use. So we know we have vessels in our house. All of you, remember you got the Tupperware and you got the china. You put the china in the fancy cabinet. You don't put the chinette there. You put the fancy stuff to protect it and to display it and to show that it's honorable, it's special. And he's going to set us apart as holy because there's a holy calling and a holy purpose, a God designed purpose for these vessels here that we are, useful to the master of the house, ready for every good work. That's to describe you and your life right there. That you are the vessel God wants to do great things with and through, and to fill with the things for his use and glory. So you think, that's you right there. Do we see ourselves this way? I hope so. I think we should. Because And our vessel needs to be full. Look what he says also in 2 Corinthians 4:7. I want to preach just on this verse one of these days. Because he says we have this treasure in what? Earthen vessels, these clay pots in the background there. There's all of us right there. We're just an assembly of clay pots, just ordinary. You know, a clay pot is fragile. A clay pot is ordinary. But God turns it into something extraordinary, not because of the pot, because of what's in it. Because he puts treasure into something as ordinary as us. Why? That the power of God may be on display and not us. That it's about God and he's glorified and not us. Wow, how cool. So we look at a God who fills. We look at next week about he fills with what? And with Psalm 109, I'm going to show you a couple illustrations of this. He has satisfied the thirsty soul, and the hungry soul he has filled with what is good. You notice and you see in the filling of God his extraordinary generosity. I'm going to put this back so I don't cause a mess. I mean, not that I'm going to spill anything, because I'm a man. We don't spill, right? Yeah, oh, y'all believe that, right? And but anyway, here, put that right there. Okay. I'm going to try not to bump that. That'd be bad. Now, in the Beatitudes, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says this in Matthew 5:6, blessed are those who hunger and thirst. That terminology indicates this not just a curious interest, but a strong, intense desire. They really want righteousness. They hunger, they crave it. And he says, look at the promise attached to that. For those people, he will fill them with that. See, it's not, some people think that God is miserly and God takes a little bitty tweezer and say, okay, here's just a little tweeze of righteousness for you. And even that would be more than we deserve, but he's not. He's extraordinarily, extravagantly generous. And he will fill us with that if we hunger and thirst for it, really want, deeply, strongly crave it. And so here's the idea of overflow. You have at the top there, you have the source coming in. This is a pitcher being tilted here, and it's being filled, but it's being filled so that it can, once it's filled, he keeps filling, so that it go beyond the vessel, go beyond me, fills me, and more than that. And overflow works this way. You've got God, he's the source, and you've got me, the vessel, and you've got others who are affected by what God does. And you see all of these things, and that's kind of the idea behind the concept of overflow. And because some people think I want to be filled, and then it's going to stop with me. God, fill me up. Fill me up with your grace. Fill me up with your forgiveness. Fill me up with your joy. Fill me up with all the blessings, and fill me up with I want all the goodies. I want all the good stuff. And then I'm good. I just can park it and go, all right, done. Sweet. But no, that's only half of the story. Is supposed to overflow from you into others. Because here's why you need overflow. Because we're all vessels, but there's a problem with these human vessels that we are. They leak. I have long said that I love babies. We got some beautiful babies in this congregation. But you know what's my challenge with babies? They leak. Well, they're supposed to. They're babies. But they leak. They leak from the nose, from the mouth, and from elsewhere. And you know what? We leak too. These vessels that are us, you can imagine in a sense, they're poked full of holes with things like this. These are the things that cause us to spring leaks when we sin, when we mess up. We're distracted and busy. We forget. Look at this. We're just human. We hurt. We lose family and friends, and things happen. And then by giving yourself, and all of a sudden, some of the things are hurtful and negative. Some of those are positive and good. By giving ourselves away and just exhausting ourselves in the service of others, also that can deplete the well, right? Can it? And all these things have the effect of holes in the bucket. That's why God keeps pouring. How am I going to overflow? Because people sometimes think what I need to do is just get filled up with God and then just, I'm done, I'm good. But what happens is my vessel leaks. And so even if I get filled up with God's grace and goodness and love and mercy and all of those things, it's going to slowly start to deplete if I don't do what? Keep having that refilled and refilled. We're going to talk about being filled with the Word. That's why Bible study and my taking in of the Word especially needs to continue because of the leakage. I need to keep filling to keep that full. So here's the God of the overflow. One of the most beautiful passages, well-known chapters in the whole Bible is Psalm 23. In the middle of that, verse 5, you remember this? He says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. It's even in the 23rd Psalm, that idea of overflow. You have filled me up so much, God. There's this holy spillover of the things that you've filled me up with. You go to Psalm 81. I, the Lord, am your God who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. Open up your mouth wide and I will fill it. There's the God who fills. Psalm 107, for he has satisfied the thirsty soul, and the hungry soul he has filled with what is good. He says, I will pour out water, Isaiah 44, on the thirsty land and streams on the dry ground, and I will pour out my spirit on your offering and my blessings on your descendant. You can just see God emptying this inexhaustible well of the things that can only come from him on his people. He said in Ezekiel 34, I will make them and the places around my hill a blessing, and I will cause showers to come down in their season, and they will be showers of blessing. Some of the same concept in different terminology, just showering the blessings on us. I love Malachi 3. He challenges his people. He says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse so that there may be food in my house, and test me. Here's God kind of throwing down the challenge to his people. He says, really? You don't think I can? You don't think I will? Test me in this. If I will not open, look at the terminology, look at the scale here. Open the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing until, how much? Until it overflows. So much on you that you can't contain it all, which is fine because you're not supposed to contain it all. It's to go to you and in you, but also through you to people around you that need to experience the love of God, to hear the word of God from you, to see the example of a Christ-filled life from you, and on and on. That's the overflow. Let's finish with two examples of the concept of overflow, one from the Old Testament, one from the New, and we can wrap up. In 2 Kings 4, you got Elisha and his ministry, the prophet Elisha. He had met this Shunammite widow and helped her out. And of course, this is during a really hard time in Israel's history. And she is she's poor, has a child, and nothing to feed them with. And so here's what he tells her to do. You hopefully know this story. He says, go borrow vessels at large from yourself, from all your neighbors. He says, get all the pots and the pans and the containers that you can. And borrow a whole bunch of containers. You can imagine her asking all her neighbors, hey, can I borrow this? Can I borrow that jar? Can I borrow that pan? Can I borrow that thing? And then you go in and shut the door behind you and your sons and pour out all the vessels, and you set aside what is full. So she went in for him, shut the door behind her and her sons, and they were bringing the vessels to her, and she poured. And when the vessels were full, she said to her son, bring me another vessel. And he said, there is not one more vessel. Because the oil kept coming. The oil kept coming. And the oil, there was a miracle of God to just fill and fill and fill and fill and fill. And of course he says, now go sell the oil. Use the money to feed your family. And she was spared. She was saved. That's overflow. You got Luke chapter 5 that was just read for us. And this is the story of Jesus. The crowd was pressing in on him and listening to the word of God. He's standing at the lake shore there at the Sea of Galilee. There are two boats lying at the edge of the lake, and the fishermen had gotten out of them, washing their nets. So you got two boats parked on the edge of the lake here, and he uses one as a floating pulpit and teaches. He gets into that one, which was Simon's, and he begins teaching the people from the boat. Now afterwards, he says, hey, Simon, let's go fishing. And which was like, what? For Simon, because he didn't fish in the daytime. They'd been out all night, which he says. And so it's this odd request, but he said, and so it probably didn't make sense to Simon, but it doesn't make any difference because Jesus wants to, so I will. And he says, we worked hard all night, caught nothing. So there's no fish out there. If there's no fish at night when the fish are catchable, what do you know is even more true in the daytime? But that's irrelevant, because Jesus wants me to, I will. And when so they do, and they go out and they drop the nets thinking, you wondering if they were going, this is crazy, I don't understand. But they do it anyway, and they enclose a great quantity of fish, and their nets begin to break. So they signal their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And look at this. Look at the result. When you obey Jesus, even when it may not make sense to you, when you don't completely understand why he wants you to do this or this or this, look at the response of God. He fills not just a net, not just a boat. He fills 2 boats to almost capsizing, an overflow of fish. Because what did they need that day? Fish. What'd they get? Fish. Lots and lots of fish. That's the concept of overflow. And that's the God we worship and serve and praise today. The God of the overflow. We see from this, we're just reminded that God's a generous giver. Let's experience that. Let's embrace that. Let's thank him for that. Let's live as the grateful recipients of his generous, extravagant generosity. And then he fills the things that can't otherwise get filled. He fills with things that you can't get. The world tries to substitute fake substitutes of all the things that God can give. But don't buy the lie and try to fill yourself with worldly imitations of what can only come from God. And remember that it's supposed to go beyond you. Don't just, when it gets to the rim, don't stop there. Say, keep pouring, so the holy overflow can go into your world and overflow into other people's lives who need that from you. So these questions to wrestle with today, as I leave these with you. You're a vessel, but what are you containing? You're a container, but what's in there? What's in your heart? What's in your mind? What's in your agenda? What's in your will? And are you empty or are you full? And with what? I want to invite you to, I think on regular occasions we should wrestle with these questions. And has God's generosity to you overflowed into the lives of others, or are we trying to kind of selfishly kind of hold that for ourselves? I want all the goodies, but just keep it to me. We worship the God of the overflow, and may he overflow in and through all of us. We'll look next Sunday at some of the specific things that he fills us with. If there are any here that need to respond to the invitation, I encourage you to do that and give your life to the Lord, or if you need any prayer,